5 minutes. 5 minutes until showtime. Yes, we are live tonight. Three minutes. 3 minutes till showtime. Two minutes. 2 minutes to showtime. I'd like to welcome everyone on Facebook Live tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We have approximately 1 minute. Okay, we're going to let the news play just for about 1 minute, and then we're going to go ahead and go live. So appreciate you all being out there.
More pushback from the White House. I'm Joe Chiaro, Fox News. The reaction continues over the Atlantic magazine story in which unnamed sources say President Trump disparaged service members during a trip to France in 2018.
This morning, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin defended his boss.
I've been at the tank at the Pentagon with him. I've been at 9/11 at the Pentagon with him. This president respects and supports the U.S. military.
Democrats, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, outraged by the allegations, but not surprised.
Whatever he says about this article, we know that he dishonored them, and it's on the record.
Friday, the anniversary of September 11th, the president will head to Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Fox's David Spunt. The campaigns of President Trump and Democratic President nominee Joe Biden will ramp up appearances.
Well, both campaigns have busy schedules this week with heavy emphasis on swing states. On Tuesday, President Trump will head to North Carolina for an event. Wednesday, Vice President Mike Pence goes to Pennsylvania. And tomorrow, Labor Day, Senator Kamala Harris heads to Wisconsin, while former Vice President Joe Biden visits Pennsylvania, now being hard fought by the Trump campaign.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich. Crews in California had to airlift more than 200 people to safety overnight after a massive wildfire trapped them in the Sierra National Forest.
At least 20 people were hospitalized, 10 were moderately injured, and 2 were severely injured. The fire jumped a river and burned near the only road into the Mammoth Pool campground. It's forced evacuations and threatened at least 2,000 structures. The National Weather Service saying it's going to be even hotter today in many parts of California than it was yesterday, when dozens of areas reached more than 100 degrees.
Fox's Christina Coleman. America is listening to Fox News. A trade group says many New York City restaurants will shut down.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We're coming to you through the America Free Radio Studios on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, We are also streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So if you utilize those platforms, please go tell your friends and make plenty of comments. And don't forget to hit that like button. That helps a lot on all those platforms. Welcome, everyone. Oh, Professor Bauer, good to see you in there. It says, greetings, fellow travelers, explorers, independent thinkers, and seekers alike. Festus Greenheart, good to see you out. And Brandy Lou, always a pleasure. Moverling, of course. He's our moderator for the first part of tonight, and it's good to see him. I had a barbecue today, ribs, but it's all over with and I'm in the chair. Also want to thank everyone at the Meet the Venusians conference that we were at this last week. It went off pretty much without a hitch. You know, it's pretty hard to have a secret conference. I mean, it's not really secret. We advertised the crap out of it, and there were about over 150 people there, which I was surprised. But we had special instructions because, as you know, in the state of California, no groups larger than 10. Well, we were in groups of 10, 15 of them. It was a pleasure. I got to meet some of my friends. Brad Olson was there. Jamie Lou was there. Even Christina Hill showed up, which was not even on the schedule. So it was quite a pleasure. I did some of those interviews by candlelight out in the woods at the foothills of Mount Shasta. And I put those videos up today. If you want to see them on YouTube, you can look them up. I'll see if I can link them to the website. I think I put them on x2radio.com, americafreeradio.com, x2-radio.com, under guest interviews. So you can go look at those videos. They're short but powerful because it's one-on-one in nature, and I think you're going to like them. All right, let's get started. We have a ton of stuff to go over. I missed last week. Sorry about that. We had to run an archive because I was in the air. First, let me give you my Religion of Peace report. In the last 7 days, the Religion of Peace conducted 42 attacks. In these 42 attacks, they killed 135 innocent people. They injured 70 innocent people. They conducted 3 suicide blasts and spread their mayhem across 12 countries. Not counting this one. That would make 13, but this is, again, from the Religion of Peace, not from Antifa or BLM. All right. Chat room is filling up fast. Thank you, everyone. Ryan, good to see you out there. Michigan, good to have you in the roster. Raz, thank you for the comments today on Facebook. Very nice. I appreciate that. Yes. Thank you for the comments on the videos I posted earlier. They were pretty good. You know, I shot them with the Osmo. You know what the Osmo is? This is the latest and greatest in high-resolution cameras. It films in 4K. And you'll notice it has a little tiny gimbal head on it. Let's see if I can turn it on here. See that little gimbal head? I mean, it's showing me right now in that little tiny screen. And what I did is I hacked a iPad mini in order to get this little tiny display that you see right here to show up on the mini so that I could operate the controls. And that's how it worked. I'm having a little trouble because this thing, it's really small, and which means it has a really small battery. And I know a little bit about electric stuff. So what I did is I created a link between a hub, and I was able to put one of those 8-hour batteries on. And I think the battery worked okay, but the issue is I was trying to get my lanyard microphone and the battery to work in the Osmo at the same time. It's not easy to do. In fact, it's impossible to do, which is exactly why I'm going to do it. And then we'll have a remote gimbal-stabilized 4K camera that you can pack in a small bag and get through the security at the airport. All right, I want to talk a little bit about China Joe. Let's get this out of the way. We've been saying China Joe for, I don't know, a year. Didn't think he was going to get the nomination. I guess maybe he was the last person to step back, maybe, and that's why he got the nomination. And it really doesn't matter because Joe isn't going to be the president anyway. He's just going to be the heartbeat. The president is an army behind him, which leads me to his vice president, China Kamala. Oh, that's new, isn't it, China Kamala? We've been calling her other things because of her rise to stardom in California, and that was a little anomalous too. I mean, think about it. I mean, have you ever wondered why China Joe chose Kamala Harris as his running mate? Really? She never won a single election. She cheated and stole every one of her stair steps to the Senate. So how did she do that? I mean, come on. The sex is not that good, okay? It's just not that good. So how about this? DLA Piper. Does that ring a bell with you? No? Well, maybe that's why you listen to this program. DLA Piper is a multinational law firm. It boasts nearly 30 years of litigious and contract experience in China, boasting over 140 lawyers dedicated completely to its Communist China Investment Services branch. It turns out that Kamala Harris, her links to this company are found through her husband. Yep. Douglas Emhoff, who has served as a partner in the firm's intellectual property and technology practice and its media, sport, and entertainment sector since 2017. Does this ring a bell yet? How about the NBA? How about all of the intellectual property that the CCP has stolen from us over the last 10 years or more? DLA Piper boasts of having long established and embedded China desks in both the U.S. and Europe to assist their China-focused consulting, prompting questions about the firm's potential proximity to the White House could be leveraged by the CCP through DLA Piper, exploited by the Chinese Communist Party, or represent an enormous and surprising financial conflict of interest for the vice presidential candidate, which is just half a heartbeat and a stroke away from the presidency. To facilitate DLA Piper's China practice, which has received countless prestigious awards from the China Business Law Journal, the China Law and Practice, the company employs a host of former Chinese Communist Party officials. Oh, yeah. Not just people who speak Chinese. Ernest Yang serves as the firm's head of litigation and regulatory department and co-head of international arbitration. That means when you have a contract dispute and you're going to settle that by contract arbitration. He was appointed to the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, that's the CPPCC, way back in 2013. The CPPCC serves as the top advisory board for the Chinese Communist Party, and Yang was promoted to the body's standing committee, you guessed it, in 2019. Thank you, Moverling, for that generous contribution in the chat room. If you're in the YouTube chat room, and you could be in Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or in the Truth Frequency Radio chat room right now, and I'll try to scoot around and see the different ones during the program, but the YouTube one is the one I monitor the most. It has, at the bottom, a little tiny rectangle with a $sign in it. I know, it's kind of gauche, but that's called Top Chat. If you click on that, you can give a contribution anywhere from, I think, $2.99 all the way to, well, I don't know if there's a limit to it. We haven't found it yet. And if you make a comment, it will highlight that comment in a big colored box that slow walks its way up the chat screen. So in the next 30 minutes, we're going to have 100 and something people watching live, and the chat room will be streaming pretty fast. I can't even watch it out of the corner of my eye without getting distracted. But those comments get highlighted, and I will address them directly. So you can make... I may discuss that. Brandy Lou asked a question, what is Nasara? It's been around for a little over 10 years. It's kind of like... you remember the Iraqi dinar scandal? You remember that? Did you ever buy any of those Iraqi dinars? Like, it was a scam, okay? People were getting their hands on all that old, worthless Saddam Hussein money, and they were selling it for about $1 per 1,000. So you could buy 1,000 dinars for $1. And oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many of my friends dumped thousands of dollars into Iraqi dinars, buying into all that Nasara crap, that the dinar was going to be economically reset and it was going to come out just like the Kuwaiti dinar did at about $284 per dinar. And it never happened. It would never happen. Nobody is going to issue Saddam Hussein's face on money again. It's just not going to happen, okay? They're not going to buy back the Confederacy's dollars, or dinars. The point is that a bunch of people, thousands of people, lots of my friends got taken to the cleaners on that. So now it has this kind of non-secular name, Nasara, which, stands for this economic reset. I don't recommend it, okay? If you're going to hoard cash, smart idea, but make sure 25% of your cash is in metal. Platinum, gold, rhodium, palladium, silver is probably the cheapest and most affordable one, and you can get it cheap. It's still going to cost you about $31 an ounce now. It was $14 to $17 an ounce for a long time. If you bought it during that period, you just made 50% on your money, sort of. Remember, metal is a storage metal. It's a storage metal. It's not an investment. You don't buy it and then sell it and buy it and sell it. It doesn't work that way. What you're doing is you're holding on to cash. You're holding on to liquidity that you have in your hands. And I recommend 25% of that cash in your cigar box or your safe is in metal, because the cash could actually go away. The cash, the state, the treasury could actually say, hey, our cash has been compromised. There's tons of counterfeit money out there, and we're going to recall it all back in, and we're going to reissue new money. It could happen. I mean, it could happen like in 2 or 3 days. It could happen. I mean, over a 2 or 3 day period, not 2 or 3 days from now. The point I'm trying to make is, if you're one of the people out there that live, work, and breathe cash, you don't have a checking account, you don't have a debit card, you're going to be in trouble, because you're going to be exposed when you have to take that money back to the bank. So I recommend having it in metal, because the metal will spend. I don't care if it goes to blockchain. I don't care if it goes to the SDR. I don't care if the World Bank comes out and issues a new Amero or whatever it is they're going to issue. It doesn't matter. It will transfer to metal. You have the universal exchange in silver bars or gold coins. So I highly recommend it, okay? Just if you're going to hold on to cash. And by the way, don't do it. Don't do it if you're in debt. If you owe on a bass boat or furniture or a computer system, you have no business saving money. Forget about it. You pay those debts off. I'm going to run this really quick by you, then I'm going to get back into Kamala Harris, because this is really important. Let's say you work for an hourly wage. Many people do. And let's say your boss comes to you one day and says, you've actually done a really good job, and I'm going to give you a $2 an hour raise. You'd be doing cartwheels. You would go out. You'd celebrate $2 an hour. Wow, what a raise. It's only $80 a week. $320 a month. less than the average car payment, less than the average student loan. Imagine giving yourself a $2 an hour raise. Now, I don't mean, printing money. What I mean is $2 an hour of disposable money. Huh? How many of you have $320 a month of disposable money? I mean, money that you could literally throw it out the window of a car down the freeway and not miss it. You could spend it on whatever you want to. You could shop on Amazon if you want to. You could buy stuff you don't need for it. A few. But $320 a month is nothing to sneeze at. It's a $2 an hour raise. So if you were to pay off a debt that you're currently spending $320 a month on, you just gave yourself a raise in disposable dollars. If you have to make $75,000 a year to keep your nose above water, you're doing it wrong. You need to downsize. Live within your means. All right, let's get back to this. The Chinese Communist Party is deeply embedded in this DLA Piper law firm. And it's not surprising, therefore, that American DLA Piper lawyers have worked on behalf of the Chinese government. Consultant James Phillips, for example, identifies himself as having advised the Chinese embassy in Canberra, Australia. It will not be surprising to see American jobs flood back to China the instant China Joe says, "So help me Allah." DLA Piper has engaged in a bevy of business deals that have left them on the payroll of the Chinese Communist Party. The company listed itself as an advisor to the two government-owned airlines, China Eastern Airlines and China Southern Airlines. Oh, by the way, they just announced China's opening a new jet manufacturing company that is making a copy of the Boeing 737-800. I wonder where they got those plans. DLA Piper has also advised China Merchants Group, a state-owned company under the direct supervision of the Chinese Communist government. Let's see. CMG also identifies itself as a crucial participant and promoter of the national initiative of the Belt and Road. That sound familiar to you? The Chinese effort to displace the dollar as the reserve currency. The firm has also advised Huarong Investment Stock Corporation Limited, a subsidiary of China's largest state-owned bad debt managers, and China National Gold Group, a state-owned mining and refining company. Tencent, the host of, this company, WeChat, which is set to be banned by the Trump administration for its compromising links to the Chinese Communist Party, partnered with DLA Piper on a $230 million deal with the Chinese tech giant's food delivery app known as Miss Fresh. Now, there's more. The Cohen Group, not that Cohen. A consulting firm started by former Secretary of Defense James Cohen of Bill Clinton days. He's also a big donor to the DNC. I wouldn't doubt he's maybe even a superdelegate. He also has a self-described strong strategic partnership with none other than DLA Piper. Now, do you see why Kamala Harris dropped out without a single delegate and acted as though she had nothing to worry about? Despite the former defense secretary slamming President Trump as a tyrant, his firm similarly employs a host of high-level Communist Chinese Party apparatchiks and has advised party officials as part of a Harvard program, which, by the way, they stole a ton of intellectual property from, which counts attendance from entities sanctioned by the Trump administration for committing serious human rights abuses. Cohen has visited China several times to meet with Chinese Communist Party officials to increase China capital flowing into the U.S. to buy American assets. And let's not forget that while Emhoff is currently on a leave of absence from the firm, presumably in relation to Harris's vice presidential bid, his ties to the company are almost identical to Joe Biden's son, Hunter, profiting immensely from billion-dollar business deals with the Chinese Communist Party. Blood is thicker than water, they say. So this is the risk that we run. We have our country being compromised at a very high level inside the Democrat Party. And I'm sorry to say, but it looks like the Chinese Communist Party has bought into both the president and the vice presidential candidate from the Democrat Party. And it is what it is. Politics is government is politics. Let's talk about the bomb. Yeah, I had to use that word. We're well enough into the broadcast now. Maybe I won't get screened out for that. Department of Homeland Security published a warning a couple of days ago, about 60 days until the U.S. presidential election on November 3rd. It indicates there are, and I quote, evolving threats against the American homeland, most recently highlighting efforts to combat an electromagnetic pulse attack, which could disrupt the electrical grid and potentially damage electronics, close quote. I don't think that threat came from my book, Charm of Favor, but this threat is woven into the book I wrote in 2011. I wrote the book as a screenplay in 2011. I published it in December of 2017. This is a serious threat, and it's true. I'm right on the money here. The department released an EMP status report a couple of days ago via the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency that said, and I quote, the key actions to address known EMP-related vulnerabilities to critical infrastructure, close quote. Now, they said an EMP attack could disrupt, degrade, and damage technology embedded in critical infrastructure systems. Widespread blackouts could be seen if an EMP was to damage the nation's electrical grid, resulting in additional flare-ups of socioeconomic turmoil. Additional flare-ups. EMP attacks are part of the emerging threats against our nation and demand a response. I responded in the only way that I can, Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli. I wrote a book. It became a #1 bestseller. 20 million people have heard the story. I wish 20 million people had bought the book. I wish they would buy the book and get prepared, because it is outlined in the book and you need to be watching. That's why DHS is taking these contingencies very seriously. They're working diligently to mitigate our risks and equipping our state and local partners with the resources they need to do the same. But they're not doing it fast enough. I can tell you right now that virtually every single substation in America is vulnerable. I don't know if you know the way EMP works. Electromagnetic pulse puts tens of millions of electron volts into the air in the form of shortwave radiation. This electricity is looking to go somewhere, and it's looking for a way to ground. And it finds it in our transmission lines, all those high tension lines you see, all the low tension lines you see draped on poles around the country. And there are lots. We don't run 200,000 volt wires underground. They are on towers above the ground. Those are also giant antennas, and they soak up these tens of millions of volts that are put into the air by this EMP. Where does the voltage go? Well, it goes anywhere it can. It goes right to the substations. It goes right to the nuclear power plants. And what does it do? It jumps the insulation because it's high voltage. That insulation's meant to protect against 100,000 volts, not 50 million volts. Once that voltage jumps the insulation, it shorts out the microelectronics that run that operation. In each one of those transformers, they're filled with oil. That oil has been de-aerated. That is to say, all the air has been vacuumed out of it, so that when it gets hot, you don't get air bubbles in there that sparks can jump across, okay? That's the insulation between the metal plates that make up the coils. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio, founder of Radio and host of Beyond the Veil. The mainstream media and establishment are running scared right now, and they've prominently featured TruthFrequencyRadio.com as number 89 on the federal government's hit list, also known as the fake news list, which is essentially a list of sites slated for censorship on Facebook, YouTube, Google, and other social media. Now is the time for you to get involved. Share your favorite TFR shows far and wide on forums and social media. Tell your friends and family about your favorite shows. If you're a business owner, get in touch with us to feature your product or service right here on TFR. And if you haven't done so already, become a TFR supporter now and get unlimited commercial-free downloads in high quality. Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/signup. Making TFR the leader in independent and uncensored talk radio. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products, available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
We exist in the security and comfort of our worlds. Paved paths, lights, and manicured lawns give us peace of mind that our world has been tamed, and we are its master. But other worlds exist on the edge of our sight. On the edge of our awareness, the shadows move. The woods is filled with the unblinking eyes of the nightmares our ancestors warned us about. Some of us have stumbled into these forgotten realms, whether on purpose or completely by surprise. I'm Brent Thomas. Join us on the Paranormal Portal Friday and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time as we journey into the world of the paranormal phenomena.
Enter the Paranormal Portal if you dare. Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Lots of questions in the chat room about EMPs and preparation. I'm going to get into that. Just give me a little second here. Instead, what's going on out there is somewhat of a plan, or a plan to have a plan, or a committee to have a plan. It's very bad news more than a year after President Trump issued an executive order on coordinating resilience against electromagnetic pulses that the Department of Energy and Department of Homeland Security have accomplished just about nothing to protect the national electric grid or other critical infrastructures that sustain the lives of 330 million Americans. We have a plan, but it's not been implemented very well, and the recent damage control on air conditioning blackouts in California should be an indicator to that. I think it was 2012, I went to Amsterdam to speak to a joint breakthrough energy conference. And in this conference, I described one of the I described all three of the threats that had been found by the National Electrical Reliability Corporation in their study of the American electrical grid, and was also covered EUMETSAT, or not EUMETSAT, but the European version of their power grid. The grid is kind of a smart idea in the sense that all of the power plants around the country are phase matched. You know, all the electricity is generated in 3 phases. And these phases are then sent out over the power lines to your home. You use two of them, 2 legs, 220, 3 is 240 or 480 or whatever it's stepped down to at your facility. The issue is that they're not phase matched prior to this effort, and so you couldn't send power from, say, Miami to Alabama. You couldn't send power from Knoxville, Tennessee to Boston to shore up its shortcomings if they had an outage or they had a load that they couldn't carry. Because the phases would fight each other on the lines, and you get something called a power factor. And I don't want to get into all the details of that, but it's hard to get rid of, and it can ruin your day as far as power transfer. But in doing this, it created 3 vulnerabilities. It created a vulnerability to pandemic, like everybody at your facility gets sick, and so your facility has to be run remotely from, say, New York or from LA or from Arizona. And the other is a cyber or physical attack. And so the power has to be shut down in your area and supplied to your area from another power plant. And the third is an EMP or solar flare, which could overload the grid as it did in 1859 during the Carrington event. Now, all we had in the air then were telegraphs, but it caught the telegraph offices on fire. Today, it would be devastating. Not so much that it hurts people or hurts animals, it doesn't. But there is a side effect, and that is that we have vulnerabilities that need to be fixed, and their solution for fixing these things, not easy to do. So what I suggested was that we create low voltage local supply using advanced technology that's now available, mass market it so that essential services such as hospitals and police stations and traffic control and telephone communications, cell phone towers, things like that could all be powered with this low voltage local supply. Then if the grid goes down, at least you would have the basic infrastructure for essential services. I'm not saying you could put it in mass production and put it on every single home. Theoretically you could, but it would take a couple of decades to do. So what happened instead was these non-expert bureaucrats conducted endless studies. We only asked for, they were going to spend $2 billion, so we were asking for $200 million, which was enough money to put all of this low voltage local supply technology into manufacturing and sell it to the market. But they turned us down. They turned us down flat. They do endless studies and conferences to wrangle over technical issues. In fact, reinventing the wheel regarding EMP that were resolved a long time ago by real EMP experts when they were actually testing EMP in the air. The coordination process for national EMP preparedness is the same kind of bureaucratic fumbling that Washington regards as action. And it gave us the biological warfare unpreparedness and inability to properly respond to the coronavirus pandemic. That's just typical of the crap that you face in Washington, D.C. Nobody listens to reason. Nobody listens to real facts. I quote, "The weak points of a modern aircraft carrier are, number one, it's a big target. The fleet is easy for a satellite to reconnoiter and to locate. A high degree of electronization is like an Achilles heel for an aircraft carrier, which relies heavily on electronic equipment as its central nervous system. These two characteristics determine one tactic. Therefore, military strategist Yi Jian said in the article in Jifang Rebao, and I quote, "The possession of electromagnetic pulse bombs or missiles provides the conditions to completely destroy the entire aircraft carrier fleet in a few seconds, and the way to complete victory in dealing with aircraft carrier fleets. Game over." In the book Charm of Favor, I explain how the EMP works, why it may already be inside our country, and how easily it could be deployed and detonated. The lights out would result in millions of deaths that have nothing to do with the actual blast. Okay? No radiation, no shockwave. There are about 10 million Americans who must have electricity to live more than a week. There are 30 million more who do not have much more than a 30-day supply of their sustaining prescriptions. Everything from diabetes to hypertension drugs would not be available for at least 3 months. The only way to stop this is to stop the EMP weapon from ever being detonated. But the global syndicate only cares about defeating America. They cannot win against the armed American unless the armed American is too busy defending their own house to do anything about their takeover. The key to stopping the EMP from being detonated, I'm sorry to say, is you. You have to be watchful. You have to call 911 if you see something suspicious. For instance, Friday on my way home, I drive a long way, about 130 miles one way to work, and I have nothing to do but listen to the radio, do business, and watch cars very closely. And one of the things that I notice on cars, you may not notice, but you're going to after this, is I watch for missing license plates. I watch for cars and trucks and vans that have no identification on them. No plates means one of two things. Either that plate has been stolen or that vehicle is stolen. Yeah. So I'm driving along, minding my own business, cracking sunflower seeds and sipping on Bang energy drink. And I see a commercial van go by. A 1-ton Dodge Ram white van with commercial, serial number on it, like 12814 or something like that, with a radio antenna on the top. No plates. No plates, no tag, no nothing. Now, you could see somebody maybe being on the bottom of the barrel. They got to get to work. They got to drive. They don't have a license on their car. I could see that. Not a commercial vehicle. Not a commercial van. A commercial van has commercial plates. They have commercial insurance. They have commercial registration. They're probably not even driven by the owner. Okay? I pull up beside the van, and there is a Middle Eastern single man driving this van. Now, I hate to tell you this, but I've seen this van in my dreams for years. So I called 911. I followed the van about a quarter mile back, just in case. And I called 911, was routed to a highway patrolman. I described the van, what mile marker were you on, and what way we were heading. We were only going about 45 miles an hour in heavy traffic. that could have easily pulled this van over and found out what's up. He was already driving in violation of the law. At least you would have got driving without a license. But at least you would have got a look inside the van. At least you would have sniffed it. At least you would have done something. Because if that van made its way to Charlotte and an EMP went off, it's lights out all the way to Miami. You get me? Lights out all the way to Miami. Just be vigilant, okay? Look around. We recently quoted Peter Vincent Pry, ex-chief of staff of the Congressional EMP Commission, who wrote an op-ed that said the virus pandemic from China has exposed dangerous weaknesses in U.S. planning and preparedness for civil defense protection. We have talked about this for 6 months, since at least March. Pry warned that China has been planning to defeat the U.S. with an EMP and cyber Pearl Harbor attack for a quarter century. And this is the election of the century. Don't forget that the Norks tested a 250 kiloton EMP weapon successfully. A weapon that powerful could take out half the U.S. grid junctions in less than 60 seconds. Neither DHS nor CISA gave any more information on evolving EMP threats on the American homeland. All they have to do is read the damn book. There was no mention of whether the threat could be from a solar storm or EMP weapons. However, the EMP status report did mention DHS is currently running EMP pilot tests to assess EMP vulnerability on infrastructure. Hello? I'm just telling you that we're vulnerable. I already told you, stop having meetings. You know, I used to work for TMMNA. That stands for Toyota Manufacturing North America. It also stands for too many meetings, no action. Finally, DHS is partnering with other federal departments and agencies, state, local, tribal, and territorial entities, and the private sector, that would be me, to field test a more resilient critical infrastructure. The only way to stop it from having damage, you can't stop it from going off unless you catch the bomb. But you can stop it from damaging. But you need lead time. You need a way to throw the bus bars in the substations, okay? The way you make these connections, you've seen them do it sometimes. They open the bus bars at the substation to switch over from circuit 1 to circuit 2. They're changing auto tap transformers so they can do maintenance. When they open that bus bar, it's a huge lightning bolt, okay? This is a bus bar about this big around, solid aluminum. It's like a knife switch. Ka-chunk. When it closes, that's how the electricity gets from the high tension lines to the 13.8 or the 14.4 auto tap transformer. That's to get it down to about 14,000 volts. That runs along the power lines to your neighborhood, to your transformers that are out on the pole, which are usually 4160 to 240. That gets it down to the voltage that goes into your house, okay? Those pad transformers, the green ones that you see in the yard around your underground utilities, those are 14,000 volt transformers, okay? They're stepping the voltage down for your neighborhood to be used in your house. All of those will fry if there's an EMP close by, because the voltage will jump through the oil and it will burn holes into plates. And once those big auto tap transformers, these are $1 million transformers, once these transformers are ruined by that high voltage, it'll take a year, 2 years. There's no inventory of these pieces of equipment. No inventory. And they cannot be repaired. They have to be replaced. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts, just to guess, the plant that makes that transformer runs on electricity. Now you know what I'm talking about. One EMP expert and a friend of the site summed up the report perfectly. And I'm going to quote, "We recognize the threat and we're working on it. And you don't need to know any more than that. Thank you for asking." We have 2 months until the election of the century. All the marbles, Earth Explorers. The global syndicate does not like losing, but it damn sure doesn't like anyone else winning. Okay? Just to keep you up to date. I'm checking the phone lines here. No callers. Wow. You know you can call in. I have the numbers posted there on YouTube. For those of you listening on Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch, the phone number to call in live and ask a question is 213-233-3998. It's right there. It's right there. See it? Right there. Other hand. Right here. See it? Right there. That's the number. Call that in, and you can ask me anything. Any question, okay? Before Google, I am, okay? So what's going on with the press? Wow. We have seen such a transition in the last 3 years, haven't we? And you know this by now because you're watching it just like everybody else does, and sometimes you are forced to change the channel, are you not? Because the propaganda press is the enemy. It is the enemy. And The Atlantic, which is a magazine in Atlanta, I've been in The Atlantic. They didn't do a very good article on me, and I gave them tons of good information. Not really happy with the magazine, put it that way. The Atlantic published a story a couple of days ago that claimed President Trump called the fallen American soldiers in World War I cemetery suckers and losers in 2018. The author's name is Jeffrey Goldberg. He cited 4 sources, all of them anonymous, no names. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. A dozen former and current Trump administration officials disputed the story. They were there. They were there. They were at that event in the car. It was too foggy to fly and too far to drive. They didn't have enough time. Trump really wanted to go. He really did. And he didn't say this. Other claims in the Atlantic story are refuted by documentary evidence. The article claims, for instance, that Trump refused to visit the cemetery because the rain would ruin his hair. That's nonsense. It's all well documented. And they never called. They never called to ask. That's the way the propaganda press works. The Biden campaign issued a statement. If the revelations in today's Atlantic article are true, and we don't even need to listen to the rest of the bull crap out of his mouth. None of the other questions asked were challenged in any way. None of the questions asked to Biden were challenging. They were questions, as Trump said, for a child. Okay? You remember seeing the movie Galaxy Quest? Yeah, you remember the bad guy saying, speak to him as though he were a child. What we witnessed Thursday night into Friday morning was the deployment of the Death Star, the full Democrat media complex on display, coordinating journalists, outside political organizations, tech platforms, and unnamed military sources. It may be no coincidence that retired General Stanley McChrystal, we've talked about him on this program before, you know, he retired, and what he took with him is a copy of the software. He took a copy of top secret intelligence software that's used to cyber attack your enemies. Yeah, it's a piece of software that reflects things that you say in social media and constructs an anti-campaign so fast and so powerful it looks like millions of accounts are coming out against you, but it's all robots. He was fired. You know why? Because he disparaged President Barack Obama and Biden. Well, now he advises a firm that's using that military technology to help Democrats produce propaganda. That's what it does. It's a propaganda program. It took weapons-grade skill to produce a story that, while unprovable, had the ring of truth to those eager to believe it. The same thing we do to the Iranians, the same thing we do to the Chinese, the same thing we do to the North Koreans. We use the software against our enemies. And General McChrystal is using it against our president. I'm serious. NBC's Peter Alexander, whether it's true or not, said the story resonates. It resonates. Well, if he didn't say it, it's so like him, we believe it. Goldberg, the unofficial stenographer of the White House, the Obama White House, he just was given a vehicle. That's it. The real story is much bigger. The same machine that created and promoted the Atlantic Peace will be sure to produce others. We have less than 60 days until the election. Watch for it to be ramping up. Pay close attention, Earth Explorers. Oh, we have a caller. Let's go ahead and take the call from Atlanta and see if we can find out what's going on with the Atlantic. Dr. Bauer, welcome to the program.
Good evening, Brooks. Professor Bauer here.
What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, just about everything that you're talking about. How convenient. I was going to mention what you just talked about with McChrystal and the whole AI program and going after that. It's fascinating when you watch how the stumbling and bumbling of the attempted rollout of, the way that let's just use dark forces as a collective term, who unleashed this pseudo-virus hyped nonsense that, it's the invisible enemy of death that springs the most persuasive emotion within all humans, which is fear. But they have stumbled and bumbled this entire rollout in a way that's been so spectacular that you have to truly put on a set of blinders to not see how inept and incompetent they've been, because literally all of the data from any expert across whatever spectrum that's been put, propped up and pushed on the sleeple has been. I mean, all the data's been spectacularly wrong. So you watch it and you go, well, did you guys really think this thing through to the point where you had contingency strategic plans for failure of your plan to actually, execute with some degree of confidence?
Yeah, but there's no downside for them. What, are they going to not sell a few more magazines? No. I mean, who's even mentioned the name The Atlantic in the last 5 years? Not a syllable. Now they're like main headlines. I got to have a copy of The Atlantic. I mean, there's no downside for them whatsoever.
I forgot that thing was even in publication.
I know. I haven't read it since they did that. Well, it wasn't really a hit piece. They just didn't represent the science well the last time they interviewed me, so I don't do interviews for them anymore.
But don't you think that the timing and let's use the term, too on point of this story is curious? To me, I look at it from an AI perspective, a lot of the Crystal piece and what they're doing. And I looked at it and I thought, this could be, and I'm going to give them kudos for being clever and for the timing, but it was too on the nose or on point, going after one of Trump's most valued and demonstrable supported communities in our veterans. I mean, long before this story came up, the RNC convention, they had veterans that were wounded. He's had them in ads. He's given them medals of honor. I mean, the empirical data antithetical to this whole thing is just completely missing. So I looked at it and I thought, could this have been something that was generated through some assistance at a minimum of this AI program?
Well, yes, it could be, and you have to understand why they do it. What they're doing is they're chipping away at the stragglers in, let's call them the Trump train, people that are riding in the caboose. They're kind of on the train, but they can easily get off anytime they want. What they're trying to do is chip away at those people, and I don't think it's working. I think they're making them mad. I think they're moving up to the dining car.
I think that's an excellent analogy. I think that the way that again, I look at trying to use an observational neutrality in all the data that comes in. I mean, if you're not, I'm got a shirt coming out for my show called Sus in Situ.
Hang through the break. Hang through the break. We got to take a 3-minute break. Just hang through the break. I'm gonna put you on mute, and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away, Earth Explorers.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo, X Squared with Brooks Agnew, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, Jaronism Raw with Jaron and Missa, Fearless with Frank Castle, Strange World with Mark Sargent, The Eye of Ra with Ra Castaldo, The Infinite Fridge with Billy Ray, Ironworks with Josh Corey, The Kev Baker Show, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear on the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Heat and wildfires plaguing the West. I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. Crews in California are working more than 20 major wildfires and had to airlift more than 200 campers who became trapped. The fires have been fueled by excessive heat and dry conditions.
This is going to be sticking around through the weekend. We continue to see these heat advisories, watches, and warnings stretching all the way down through the desert Southwest, up the California coast, well above triple digits, all the way up and down the state of California. But some of the spots in the desert Southwest, 115, 120 degrees.
Fox meteorologist Adam Klotz, California's power grid managers are warning there could be rolling blackouts if customers don't conserve energy. Some health officials are concerned this holiday weekend could lead to another spike in COVID-19 cases this fall. Fox's Charles Watson reports.
Dr. Fauci urging people not to let their guards down against the virus.
We have seen after the 4th of July, we saw after Memorial Day, a surge in cases. Wear a mask.
In California, many cities and towns are closing beaches to contain large crowds this weekend.
President Trump says he's optimistic that a COVID-19 vaccine could be available by early November. More protests are expected in Portland, where police last night again declared a riot. There were other protests as well.
Peaceful protests and bike rallies here in New York City last night, but a different scene upstate in Rochester last night when things did take a turn. Outrage mobilizing activists to join together to rally over the treatment of Daniel Prude after body cam footage shows police pinning the 41-year-old black man on the ground with a bag over his head. He died 7 days later.
Fox's Alex Hogan. 7 officers involved have been suspended. America is listening to Fox News.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Second hour of X Squared Radio coming to you live through the America Free Radio studios on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. This is really, really moving up, by the way. TalkStream Live is kind of the clearinghouse for all the podcasts in the country that are going out live. And Truth Frequency is way up there, actually. We're competing with The Blaze and NBC and Newsmax, so we're doing really well, and it's you. I appreciate you so much. You just don't know. Also, I want to let you know this year is going to crank up eventually. We finally got to go to conferences last week, and it was very well received. Rob did a great job. Rob Potter did a great job putting it together. It was good to see friends, good to meet new people, and it was good to get out and finally realize that, my gosh, there are people even in California who realize that this entire Operation Corona scare is nothing but a scam. It's nothing but a high-level global operation scam. That being said, we are going to crawl out of it. And when you get out of it, you might want to choose to live your dream instead of trying to find another company to work for. Next week, next Saturday, is session 1 for September's classes. It's a master class on manifestation called Remembering the Future. You can get to it at my website. Just click on the webinars link. I will put the link right down here in the bottom in the description so that later you can click on that. It's the best $47 you're ever going to spend on yourself. I don't feel good about taking somebody's condo payment to teach them the things that they need to know to make their life better, to choose a new pathway from the future. So $47 is affordable. That's a small family outing at the movie theaters. I can do that. If I can give you some information in 5 hours that will change your life or open. I've got 2 people I'm working with right now. Both of them are authors, and both of them are unpublished. And guess what we're going to do this month? We're going to publish both of them. Both of those people are going to be published authors this month. How about that? That's a big change. That's a big change for just about anybody. All right, let's get back to it. I want to get back to Professor Bauer down in Atlanta. Where were we? We were talking about this incredibly blatant plan by the global syndicate to grossly use the press to try to chip away at the weakest ones on the Trump train.
Yeah, this latest event with, trying to come up with, some type of data that is unverified, anonymous, hearsay, and more specifically, I was musing about the timing and the on-the-point nose targeting the people that they are. It just came out of nowhere. This is supposedly from years ago. And these are typically how these things happen, right? They have a little arsenal of a little bag of turds that they're going to throw against the wall to see what sticks. And they're not very good strategically at organizing them or using them in some type of gaming theory where they can actually achieve what they want. I mean, although obviously there's been a significant result as a like shutting down the planet and causing the pause. But as you talked about it in the opening here, and I feel as well, what we're about to see on the other side of this, once we crawl through it and, clean off the boots and put the shovels away, it's going to be amazing. But this whole Trump thing that what's happened now and causing fear at this targeted group of these are, if you wanted to use a generalization of the term patriot, you would, I think, first think of the military, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and the military's, being divided up as well. When you have Hillary Clinton come out and openly say, even if Joe Biden loses on election night, don't, under any circumstances, concede, because we will drag this out, chip away at it, and eventually we're going to win. Like like the election just starts on November 3rd for them. At least they know what the target is. This cheat by mail plan that's being put out, it is really quite unbelievable. By the way, if you go to my website at americafreeradio.com, right there on the front page is a red, white, and blue button. It says vote. Okay? If you don't know where to vote, you don't know how to vote, you don't know when early voting starts, you don't know if your state has switched over to cheat by mail, click that button. There are 11 states that have switched over to cheat by mail. That's 70 electoral votes. They plan to drag out until March or April or maybe even June of next year before we know who won the election. That's their plan. So you need to find out if your state's one of them and start picking up the phone. And what we're going to do, I think
that's in. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say what I think Trump followers are going to do is they're going to vote in person, and most of them are going to vote on election day. Why? So they don't know what the target is. They don't know how many people have voted for Trump. They won't know until like midnight on November 3rd. But that's when the game starts. That's when Ballots RS is called up and extra ballots are brought in to start flipping these precincts. You know, in the old days...
So what do you think the chances are of the 50-state sweep on the Electoral College at a minimum?
I think it's pretty slim, and I'll tell you why. Hawaii is the first state to flip completely to cheat by mail. Now, I do know that all of Hawaii's primaries are done, so we know everyone that's going to be on the primary or in the general election in Hawaii. I have it on pretty good authority that the presses are running right now, either in China or by Chinese, to print counterfeit ballots for the state of Hawaii. And they're going to be printed by the millions. Now, Hawaii only has 3 electoral votes, but that's how they're going to do it. They're going to mail these ballots to what are called eligible voters. They're not even registered. They just got a driver's license. They're going to be mailed a ballot, and somebody's going to vote that ballot, whether it's the person it went to or somebody at that address. But here's the problem, Professor. Those ballots are then going to be delivered by the post office back to the precinct. And the issue is that the outside of that ballot designates whether it's a Republican or Democrat ballot. And the post office has already come out and endorsed Biden.
In the code.
There's a conflict of interest. Big conflict of interest when the postal unions have openly endorsed Biden, and they're going to be handling Republican ballots.
Right. So what about just the total electoral blowout in spite of winning all 50 states? Say, all he needs to win is 35 or 40 states in the popular vote. I would think that would push or get it close. I don't know the math, but get it close to the 270 for the electoral. What if it's 340 or 350 on the electoral, and they still try to throw in we've got to verify this is obviously an issue? Wouldn't that put their entire strategy at that point at serious risk?
Yes, it would. And they know the data as well as anyone else. Maybe they don't, but I've published enough of it, and others have published enough of it, that everybody knows these polls are a construct. What you really should be going by are the energies and results of these primaries. And what we're seeing in the primaries is very telling. And here's what I mean. More people are coming out in uncontested primaries for Republicans than voted in 2016 for Republicans. Roughly half the number are coming out in the primaries for Democrats. That means that the Democrats have walked away. And I don't think that China Joe, or now we have China Kamala, I don't think that they're inspiring Democrats to come back. The other issue is that Mitt Romney won about 3% of the black vote. Donald Trump stands to win about 45% of the black vote. So these are the things that I'm watching, and I'm predicting 378 electoral votes for Donald Trump. That's going to be very hard to overcome. even if there are 6 or 7 states that have not certified their elections yet.
Let's say he gets 370. It happens election night, probably the next morning. I think it'll come in a wave. My spidey sense says that not only the stat you mentioned about the increased black approval and wanting to vote for Trump, we've also got this phenomena of people who are lying to the pollsters because people know that not only the polls, they're just statistical model constructs that have a bias built in to give them the result more or less of what they're looking for, right? So
yeah, you can tell by the way they ask the questions.
Silent Trump supporter and the growing number of people who last time didn't know enough and didn't like, but now when they hear the rhetoric, but they see the results, and there's a huge disconnect.
Oh, when you have a party whose main platform is that people of color are too stupid to get identification to vote, that's very racist. That really offends people.
You know, I'm using the intellectualist term as well. It's like you got this ironic situation where those that claim to have the intelligence are the ones displaying the least amount of it. And so they try to use this intellectual pedestal or stool they sit on. And these are the experts, regardless of the knowledge domain. I think we talked about it a little bit last time on the last show, but you get this knowledge domain piety, and its constructs are so limited to whatever metrics have been used to define that knowledge domain. And you get into it, and you know a shitload about that, but your interdisciplinary connections with other knowledge domains is rare at best and non-existent at worst. And I think that the change that this whole, what I'm calling the knowledge apocalypse, which is the unveiling of knowledge, is upon us. People, the access to data and knowledge, you have to have good filters, use discernment and judgment, and that's after you figure out what it is that you are interested in that, drives your curiosity and imagination. The freedom to do that now, to change the old paradigm of what is we've called education and schooling into just individual learning.
Well, that and you have a full-on campaign,
for the good.
And you got a full-on campaign that's operating on all channels, all hours, to override your intellectual discernment with emotion, trying to drive that emotion with fear, with suspicion, and that's all part of the plan too. I mean, the global syndicate has spent the better part of 87 years building their government inside our government, and they have millions of employees, and they have limitless budgets of taxpayer dollars, and they've painstakingly taken control of all the mass media, including TV, radio, and online platforms. Only free revolutionaries like America Free Radio manage to reach a small audience with the truth, and that is what's going to win.
Yeah, it's what I'm referring to is if you see through the illusion, you are a part of the solution. Because if you're looking objectively and with neutrality or whatever it is, and you develop good filters, discernment, ways to, you've got a good foundation of rational judgment and reasoning, then when you watch this stuff, I'm trying to bring it back to this whole Trump thing. When I'm sitting back here and I'm watching it, it's like, okay, we have a reality TV show star running the country as a business, which whether you like it or not, regardless of the legalities, the country's a business, and it's finally being run by someone who at least understands and apparently has some mastery over those skills and talent. We've got a reality show running a reality show, and I'm watching the reality show, and it's two movies on one screen. You look at the same data, and depending on what filter you've got on, it's like that. I don't know if it's Mad Max where they move the 3D glasses and it says one thing. I mean, that's
called They Live. It's called They
nonstop.
Live. It had Roddy Piper in it. It was pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just marveling at that. But I think again, and this is, I'm going to take advantage of your class because that just sounds like an awesome experience to really help not only open the mind and your consciousness to what the possibilities are. And I think that's the thing that I see coming up that's going to be the most amazing outcome of this mess that we've been dragged through. But let me ask you this: have you heard anything about an energy announcement sometime between now and the State of the Union next year?
Energy with respect to what?
Like a breakthrough, like this major, like we were talking about, I think it was General Quantz that was talking about having technology that's off the development bench, and it's in your hand, and it gives you free energy. Something along those lines. Musk has got a new battery day announcement coming up in a week or two. There's a company called NVD, which is doing a nuclear reuse of decayed uranium, which, at least according to current theory, looks like it has some potential and some possibility, like a 1,000-year battery. But there seems to be, in my sense, there's something about to be announced after we get through finishing this election nonsense, and things start stabilizing and becoming more reasonable. Have you heard anything like that at all? Do you have any thoughts?
Just rumors. I haven't heard anything concrete. I have seen a tremendous amount of competition between the Russians, the Europeans, and the Americans on these heavy boosters to get rockets into space. I know we just tested our new rocket, and the Russians had problems with their Proton rocket, and the Europeans are stalled on their heavy lift program. So between these, we're probably talking about $20 billion between these three rocket programs, these three heavy lift programs. And I doubt very seriously that these countries would be spending that kind of money on heavy lift technology. These are mostly boosters to get big payloads into orbit or beyond. If there was technology out there that made it obsolete. So I'm just saying they're pushing the envelope now of escaping Earth's gravity. I think the big gold is helium-3. I think that the race has just begun. The Chinese have a head start, but the people that can exploit the helium-3 reserves on the moon are going to change the world. Energy is going to be so cheap, you could just about give the electricity away. The benefit of doing that would benefit mankind far more than what the utility companies could earn off of that electricity.
Who do you think will get there first, Musk, Bezos, or NASA?
Well, it's going to be a combination of the three.
Aside from the fact that the secret space program is probably already there.
Well, I don't know about the secret space program. Really, I don't. I've studied all the time, but I haven't found any concrete evidence. I think it's going to be a combination of the three. It's going to be SpaceX and their bold technology. It's going to be NASA and their Space Force that is going to make it possible. I think Europe is going to be involved. I even think Russia is going to be involved. I think that it's a benefit to all mankind. If we go to war over helium-3, it will not be a good thing. Listen, I got to take another break. It's been a great segment. Thank you very much for calling in.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Earth Explorers, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back, top of the hour. Don't go away. Or bottom of the hour. Sorry about that. Be right back after this. Oh, I'm sorry. That's 6 minutes, not 0 minutes. Okay. So I want to finish this because we touched on it. There was another caller in in the call board. You can call back at the bottom of the hour, and I'll take your call. It should be obvious to the most casual observer that President Trump is going to win in November, as long as the global syndicate can be prevented from counterfeiting and subverting the election with forged ballots. They have spent the better part, as I said, of 87 years building their plan, and they're not going to give up. Does the syndicate fear us? Not really. We're too small, and you listeners are of no consequence, or so they believe. Still, they're going to lose the election. But as I stated in 2016, the election was only a battle. The war on America raged on, and looking back, they are so much like Stacey Abrams, who believed she is still the governor of Georgia in exile, or Hillary Clinton, who believes she won the election, less, of course, the keys to Air Force One. So what is their plan? I am glad you asked. I got a copy of their plan today. That's why you listen to this program. A group of syndicate Republicans and Democrats, they've been holding war games. That is to say, they are modeling multiple catastrophic scenarios for the 2020 election, including a simulation where a clear victory by Donald Trump provokes unprecedented measures which the Biden campaign could take to foil a new Trump inauguration. A group of syndicate officers, former Obama and Clinton era officials, as well as a cadre of never-Trump Republicans, have spent the past few months conducting simulations and war games regarding the different 2020 election doomsday scenarios. Per several media reports on the group, they call themselves the Transition Integrity Project, TIP. They justify these exercises as specifically preparing for a scenario where President Trump loses the 2020 election and refuses to leave office. But don't you be fooled for a second, because I got their planning documents. I have a copy. They're planning to craft an American victory into a constitutional crisis. Over the next few days, you're going to see the global syndicate, which is using the Biden campaign as a front to make bold moves aimed at capturing the presidency. I mean, like, capture the flag, only with poison and guns. I am revealing to you officially that the TIP has considerable ties to the Obama administration, where Biden laundered billions in taxpayer cash through syndicate nonprofits and show corporations all over the world, most notably in Ukraine, where Biden and his son are currently under criminal investigation and will likely be indicted in the next few weeks. Indeed, the fact that a group of openly never-Trump syndicate officers in Washington, consisting of wealthy insiders and former government officials, are running computer models this very minute, and they're practicing for outcomes and their aftermath. These plans do include street violence. They do include cyber attacks and even heavy weaponry and a possible EMP weapon that may already be in position. Hillary Clinton publicly demanded that Biden refuse to concede under any circumstances, including a landslide victory for Trump. In her unchecked ego, she leaked to the public the TIP plan to drag out the results for weeks or months, slicing away at the precincts with every weapon in their arsenal to take back the Senate and use military force if necessary. Whose military the syndicate plans to use remains to be seen, but do not count out the loyalty to the global syndicate. Of course, you understand now that TIP's claim to be ensuring, quote, integrity in the presidential transition process is really an active intelligence operation focused on ensuring that Trump leaves office, regardless of the result, or to manufacture the very constitutional crisis they claim to be preventing. through their simulations. They have absolutely no hesitation or compunction about stating that dead is as good as alive. When we get back, I'm going to talk about the syndicate's war games. I have the document. If you want it, I will link it in my notes, which you can access through the newsletter. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, shame on you. It's free. It means it don't cost nothing. And all you have to do is go to the website, americafreeradio.com, and sign up for it. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away. The war games are very, very important. We have 58 days.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. September 2018. Extendivite works in keeping my blood pressure in the normal range. I've been using Extendivite for many years now. May 2018. Great product. I use regularly and I rarely get sick. March 2018. This product has relieved what appeared to be angina pain in my chest and shortness of breath after climbing stairs. I'm quite happy about it. February 2018. My husband, son, and I have been using this product for a few months now, and we have noticed an improvement in our joints and blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that builds slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Fear is a mind killer. Fear is the little death. This is Uncle Walt from the Ironworks. Josh, Corey, and I have chosen to look at life with no fear. No fear of the unknown. No fear of questions about the supposedly well-known. No fear of ridicule for thinking outside the familiar fool's lines. No fear of the boot on the neck of those refusing the party line. No fear of taking on those so convinced of their beliefs they would sooner drink the Kool-Aid than believe they've been fools made. In this world filled with me too, cattle think, can truth's protective layers be peeled back to show the tender, juicy pink? Are we all just grist for the mill? Souls sold against our will? It's just, or is that how it feels? When you're filled to the rim with triviality so fear-filled and grim, break clear of the fear right here. Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 a.m. on TFR. Josh and I and you will hammer out the impurities of technology-driven groupthink, fold in a dash of logic, and quench it all with a bit of absurdity. The Ironworks. Break clear of the fear.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. TNR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days I through, but in this final moment, I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever, or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Halfway point, I just want to let you know, Contact in the Desert 2021 is on. And I have the banner up here on YouTube's, and it's also going out on Facebook and Twitter and Twitch tonight. Please go to my website, brooksagnew.com, click on the upcoming events, and you can get discount tickets to the biggest UFO show in the world. Yeah, Contact in the Desert is by far the biggest. We expect to see between 8,000 and 9,000 people at this Contact in the Desert. So believe me, every hotel in town in Palm Springs will sell out, including the resort. My suggestion is to put 3 or 4 people together, split the cost, come in, get a room at the resort, meet and greet. All the hosts will be there. We're going to be speaking in the big room, the Crystal Ballroom, 1,200 people. We're going to be debuting my book, Asteroid Mining, The Future of Energy. We may have some technology to show off. We may have some representatives from some private space corporations there to say hello. Trust me, it is not going to be an event you want to miss. Contact in the Desert. Go to my website and check it out. I'll put the link there in the bottom. All right, I promised you to get into these war games, and I want to do that. Let me just check the chat room really quick. It's been going so fast. Greenheart's in there. Raz is in there. Raz, thank you so much for the kind comments tonight. He said, we are all the spiritual army, and I agree with that. Moverling, great comments in there all night long. Thank you very much. Susie Sanderson, you're new. I'm glad to see you out there. Keep the faith and stay positive, she says. I agree. Alan, as always, thank you very much for supporting. And I agree with that, Bomar. A half-mile walk. I walk about a third of a mile from where I park to my office, and it's down 85 feet. Yeah, 85 feet at a third of a mile. That's a hoof going down and up. No, it's not uphill both ways. It's only uphill one way. And Hope Cafe says, sheriffs are elected by the people. Only job is to protect the constitutional rights of the people from overbearing mayors, governors, and lawbreakers. Could be. They are elected officials. Some think that they're the highest law enforcement officials in a community. U.S. Marshals have more authority, can go anywhere to follow a fugitive, and I think they should turn about 200 of them loose on the deep state, and let's clean this thing up. William says, Chef William checking in for the first time, and I intend to become a supporter and a lifetime listener. Very good, very good. We had pork ribs tonight. The other white meat. Yeah, we get that. Leanne Williams, good to see you. William, good to see you. All right. And thanks for supporting the chat room and YouTube. It's always good to see you. And there's about 90 people live right now, only 36 likes. You know what to do, okay? You know what to do. Between now and tomorrow morning, there'll be about 500, and by midweek, there'll be a couple thousand. So it's growing. It's growing a little bit. I appreciate it more than you know. It would be so good to have a couple thousand live, because then we could, move the universe a little bit, shift it on its axis live. So I promised you to talk about the Syndicate's War Games. Members of the TIP is the Transition Integrity Project. They always give it these, benign names like, Marchers for America or something like that. They met in June to conduct 4 war games. And what they did is they simulated a dark 11 weeks between Election Day and Inauguration Day, dividing their forces to attack the U.S. Post Office, printed and electronic media, celebrity endorsements, and of course the use of terroristic litigation against Trump allies. The U.S. Post Office unions endorsed Biden for president. This is such a blazing conflict of interest in that ostensibly those same postal workers will be responsible for delivering the ballots of more than 100 million Americans voting for Trump. And this is where it really gets chilling. I don't mean to make you afraid. I just want to make you aware. But don't think for a minute that all the flotillas, all the marches, all the rallies, all the flags, all the parades, all the prayers are not important. They are. But one of those war game situations which examined what would transpire between Election Day and Inauguration Day, an event of a clear Trump win, shows that the TIP simulated their options for holding on to power regardless of the election results. You get that? Tossing 70 Democrats out of Congress, defeating all 12 Democrat senators running and winning the White House, and perhaps 10 governorships would evaporate any political party. But not them. This is not a political party we're talking about. This is a war. These are actual war games that are being modeled in Washington today, as we speak. The TIP's simulations involve the Biden campaign refusing to concede. So what, you ask? He'll be the big fat loser, drooling in his wheelchair. What do we care if he concedes or not? Well, the actual document from TIP on the exercises revealed the specific moves the Biden campaign would take following a clear win for the Trump campaign. Unsurprisingly, these moves are violent, and they are considering killing massive numbers of innocent Americans. Not the phony killing like the Operation Corona scare, not a bunch of fabricated people that are going to die anyway switched over to COVID as a killer, to fuel the global media empire with images of how much Trump is dividing the country and causing violence. You remember William Randolph Hearst? You remember him? He said, "Give me a picture and I will give you a war." It was a boiler accident in an American vessel. It was called an attack by the Spanish, and consequently the American Navy sailed to Spain or Philippines and sunk the Spanish Navy. In the TIP's clear Trump win scenario, it's on page 17. I'm going to link the actual document. I've got it in PDF. It's not all broken up in code. I'll link it in my newsletter. I'll hold it on my server. I'm going to hold it for a while. I don't want to get caught with it for too long, but I'll hold it for a while if you want to read it. This is the actual document put out by the DNC. By the TIP, okay? This is their document. No, I'm not going to tell you how I got it. Joe Biden is played by John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign manager and chief of staff to former President Bill Clinton, retracted his election night concession and subsequently convinced 3 states with Democrat governors, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Michigan, to ask for recounts. Then the governors of Wisconsin and Michigan sent separate slates of electors to those sent by the state legislature to the Electoral College, ostensibly to act as faithless electors. Next, the Biden campaign encouraged Western states, particularly California, but also Oregon and Washington, and they're collectively known as Cascadia, to secede from the Union unless congressional Republicans agreed to a set of structural reforms. Subsequently, with advice from former President Obama, the Biden campaign laid out these reforms as following. All right, you ready for these? You haven't heard these before. Pay attention, because you're going to hear about them tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock in the morning when Alex Marlowe, well, it may be a best of tomorrow, so you might not hear it till Tuesday. Breitbart News will probably cover this. This is where the headlines, we drive them here. That's why you listen to this program, because you're burned out on reruns for the weekend and you want to start your news analysis week. It starts here on Sunday nights. Number 1, give statehood to Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Number 2, divide California into at least 2 states and maybe as many as 5 to more accurately represent its population in the Senate. That's 10 more senators, by the way. Require Supreme Court justices to retire at 70. Eliminate the Electoral College. When I mentioned a constitutional crisis, you thought I was mincing words, didn't you? Listen up. These structural reforms involve the creation of what essentially amounts to having the U.S. devolve into 56 states, with new states set to ensure a perpetual majority for Democrats. As only Democrat majority areas, D.C., Puerto Rico, California, are given statehood. If Biden wins, they may still do this. I was just in California last week. The state of Jefferson is the north of the state. They mean it. They have the money and they have the votes to make this happen. And don't count Adolph Newsom out at all. He's part of it. That is to say, he's making the state insane with anger. He's pissing everyone off, fining people to go to the beach $500 for not wearing a mask, forbidding any meetings whatsoever with more than 10 people. By the way, we had 150 in our meeting and we got away with it. Of course, the TIP document asserts that Trump's campaign had created the conditions to force the Biden campaign into taking these extreme actions. It's sort of like a bully screaming to the TV cameras that his victims attacked him by hitting his fists with their faces, or the battered wife telling their neighbor from the backside of an ice pack that she deserved it for making her husband mad. The TIP also claimed that the Trump campaign would seek to paint these provocative, unprecedented actions as the Democrats attempting to orchestrate an illegal coup, despite the fact that that is essentially exactly what those actions entail. The war games, they don't end here. In one model, the Biden campaign provokes a breakdown in the joint session of Congress on January 6th by getting the House of Representatives to agree to award the presidency to Biden, adding that this was based on the alternative pro-Biden submissions sent by a majority of the syndicate-controlled governors. All of these governors received millions in campaign contributions from China or the Sinaloa drug cartel. Oh, you don't believe me? Well, come with me, and I will show you the cartel's land transactions along I-5 in Central California. I was there. Adolph Newsom is following orders. In their war model, the Republican Party did not consent, noting that neither candidate won 270 electoral votes. The remaining state elections may not be certified for months, if ever. The cheat-by-mail scandal will be so bad that they may have to run the election again in those 11 states. By the way, those 11 states, they make up 11 electoral votes, as I shared with you on Wednesday and a little over a month ago. The TIP election simulation ended with a no president-elect being inaugurated on January 20th. The 20th Amendment would most assuredly be tested in the Supreme Court, with the Speaker demanding to be appointed by Congress as the acting president until the election can be decided. The TIP document admits it was unclear what the military would do in this situation. We may, in fact, see military factions fighting one another to keep America protected from this coup. Sort of like in Egypt when the police squared off against the military during the Arab Spring. I was there too. I left the day before it happened. Of course, some TIP members, including its co-founder, Rosa Brooks, a former advisor to the Obama-era Pentagon and currently a fellow at the New America think tank. These think tanks, you gotta love them. They have their preference for what the military would do in this situation. For instance, Brooks, writing less than 2 weeks after Trump's inauguration in 2017, argued in a magazine called Foreign Policy that a military coup, or at least a refusal by military leaders to obey certain orders, was one of the 4 possibilities for removing Trump from office prior to the 2020 election. That hasn't happened, has it? We're there, Earth Explorers. We're right there. The concept of election night, no longer accurate. And indeed, it may even be dangerous. This is what they said. We face a period of contestation stretching from the first day a ballot is cast in mid-September until January 20th. The winner may not, as the TIP assesses, likely will not be known on election night. You're already hearing people say that. You're already hearing the news actors openly say that. This period of uncertainty provides opportunities for an unscrupulous candidate to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the process and to set up an unprecedented assault on the outcome. Campaigns, parties, the press, and the public must be educated to adjust expectations starting today. This is in the TIP document. Point number 2. Listen closely. This is what's written down. What they've planned, what they're discussing is above and beyond this. A determined campaign has opportunity to contest the election into January 2021. We anticipate lawsuits, divergent media narratives, like America Free Radio, attempts to stop the counting of ballots, protests drawing people from both sides. President Trump, the incumbent, will very likely use the executive branch to aid his campaign strategy, including through the Department of Justice. I have been saying for months that the arrests need to begin, regardless of the political fallout. In fact, the political fallout will be worse. I said, war is justice denied. I continue. We, the TIP, assess that there is a chance the president will attempt to convince legislatures and or governors to take actions, including illegal actions, to defy the popular vote. In other words, there are states in which that state, like Colorado, for instance, is going to go red. It is going to vote for Trump by probably close to double digits. But the state legislature is going to cast its electors with the popular vote. In other words, the state officials are going to override the citizens of that state. Federal laws provide little guidance for how Congress should resolve irregularities when they convene in a joint session on January 6, 2021. Of particular concern is how the military would respond in the context of uncertain election results. Here, recent evidence offers some reassurance, but it is inconclusive. Next point. The administrative transition process itself may be highly disrupted. Participants in our exercises of all backgrounds and ideologies believed that Trump would prioritize personal gain and self-protection over ensuring an orderly administrative handoff to his successor. I doubt that very seriously. They want to organize 1,000 influencers to denounce the efforts to steal the election. They want to organize all living presidents to stand with Biden and denounce Trump. They want to recruit moderate Republican governors. We call these never-Trumpers or rhinos, Republican in name only, Baker, Hogan, and others, to form an election protection coalition, working with local Democratic elected officials to call on the Adjutant General of the National Guard, along with representatives from the technology sector, to monitor vote counting. Organizing a bipartisan National Day for Restoration of Democracy and a National Day of Unity, both including faith leaders. Why would you need to restore a democracy we already have? Attempting a capital strike and a work stoppage as part of the overall effort to push corporate leaders to insist that all ballots, mail-in, with or without signature, be counted, regardless of compliance to the law. This is what's going on. This is what they're planning. They have 4 war games. The first is an ambiguous result. The Trump campaign began the game by calling on Biden to concede based on the election night in-person voting returns. Because election night, when people go out and vote in person, Trump's going to win. Okay? We know that probably the Justice Department is going to deploy federal agents across the nation to secure the voting sites and prepare the National Guard for possible deployment to maintain order, because there's going to be a lot of protests. Those enterprise rental trucks backing up with hundreds of thousands of ballots to flip those elections, they're going to be stopped. On election night, the Biden campaign will refuse to concede. GOP election officials publicly supported Trump's victory and claims of voter fraud, but stopped short of supporting the deployment of military forces. Democrat elected officials were proactive in the states where they held offices to ensure all mail-in votes would be counted, no matter when they arrived or how long it would take. You could see where the fraud is setting up. They've already built bipartisan coalitions to oversee and protect the mail-in ballot count. And I don't mean absentee ballots. I'm talking ballots that they mailed out that were not requested by anybody and mysteriously got voted by someone at that address and mysteriously got sent back. Talking about those ballots. Game 2 is a clear Biden victory. I don't think this one's going to happen. But they're anticipating all kinds of skullduggery if Trump sees a clear Biden victory. Game 3 is a clear Trump win. I think this is going to be the more common one. Trump campaign had 2 main objectives at the outset of the scenario. The first priority was to legitimize the Electoral College results by pushing narratives that cast doubt on former President or Vice President Biden's popular vote victory, if he does win the popular vote, and promoting mob rule. Well, the mob rule only comes from the Democrats. Republicans don't do mob rule. We never have. The most consequential action of the first turn was the Biden campaign retraction of its election night concession. It capitalized on the public's outrage that for the third time in 20 years, a candidate lost the popular vote but won the Electoral College. They also capitalized on concern about widespread voter suppression before and on Election Day. The Biden campaign began the game by encouraging 3 states with Democrat governors, as I said, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Michigan, to ask for recounts no matter what. At the end of the first turn, the country was in the midst of a full-blown constitutional crisis. It was characterized by political chaos, widespread threats of violence, which, by the way, a lot of people are worried about going to vote in person, seeing what has happened all across the country. Now, 48 out of 50 of the largest cities in our country are being threatened with violence, cars being stopped, people being pulled out of their cars and beaten, restaurants being raided, people being shot, people being kicked in the head, kicked unconscious, burned, Molotov cocktails. You know, believe it or not, a lot of voters don't feel like they want to face that. So they might vote absentee. They might trust the post office with their ballot. Hard to say. Hard to say. But I can tell you this. In my mind, Trump voters are going to vote early in person or on Election Day in person. In fact, I think they're going to vote as close to Election Day as possible in order to keep from giving the Democrats a target to shoot at. We know that the streets are going to be hostile, dangerous, they're going to be highly partisan, and they're frequently unconstrained information and media environment attacking Trump supporters as deplorable. It's already happened. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Top of the hour coming up.
Truth Frequency Radio is your number one source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. You know, you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117. Or call into your favorite show, toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Heat and fires scorching the West. I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. Managers of California's grid are warning there could be rolling blackouts if customers don't conserve energy despite the sweltering heat, which is expected to continue.
At least for the next couple of days for folks across the western half of the United States, particularly in the desert Southwest and across California, really just extreme heat lingers. So no surprise here. We've got heat warnings across a very wide area. It's dangerous to spend a lot of time outside when you're talking about this kind of heat and you add in the humidity.
Fox meteorologist Adam Klotz. The high temperatures and dry conditions are making it difficult for crews battling more than 20 large wildfires in California. The Trump administration says it's agreed with congressional Democrats on a plan to keep the government running beyond the September 30th deadline.
Secretary Steven Mnuchin said on Fox News Sunday that he and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have agreed on an approach to avoid a government shutdown.
We'll do this separately from the CARES Act negotiations. We're having the appropriations staff, the four corners, meet and go through some specific details on it.
Mnuchin says a timeline for the continuing resolution has not been set, but he anticipates the initial agreement will keep government open through December.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced overnight curfews on some 40 cities and towns hit hard by the coronavirus. There's been unrest as protesters demand his resignation over his handling of the pandemic and corruption charges. Top-seeded Novak Djokovic disqualified from his fourth-round match at the U.S. Open after he accidentally hit a line judge in the neck with a tennis ball. It was a disappointing end to Djokovic's bid for an 18th Grand Slam title. America is listening to Fox News.
Into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
All right, welcome back. Third hour, final hour, X Squared Radio tonight. By the way, we're getting very close to 10,000 followers or 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. This is a threshold for us. I really appreciate the support so much out there. If you have been to Amazon and you've bought one of my 11 books in print, there are 7 bestsellers there. You don't get a signature if you buy them from Amazon, so I created this. Yeah, it's a signature card insert. It says the present from the future, and it has an adhesive back. I'll sign it, and then you just peel this back off and stick it in your book, and you have an autographed copy of the book. I send these to you for free. All you have to do is write me, shipping and handling, whatever it is, $1.20, and that's to go to Canada. Cheaper than that in the States. And also, there's a little bit of swag, just something to get the conversation going. Armband, it says the present from the future. People got to have these little motivational bands now, so these are good. One size kind of fits all. And that's at the website as well, brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the militias of the 19th and 20th centuries. You know, we have a lot of people talk about militias, some positive, some not, but it's been a part of America since 1675. And is at least as early as the I'm going to say 1990s, the term militia has been used by journalists and scholars alike in connection with right-wing extremists. And this is really a kind of a disservice to history. Over time, the term militia has been used to describe nearly every group of non-leftist, that's like calling a woman a person with a cervix these days, but a non-leftist armed men has been generally used in close connection with terms like extremism, violence, and vigilante, even though there is zero evidence supporting that. We have been reminded of this in recent years during riots in places like Ferguson, Kenosha, which, by the way, in both cases, armed volunteers attempted to assist private sector business owners with protecting their property from looters and rioters. And in both cases, the volunteers were described with terms such as violent militia, extreme, and white vigilante, but that has never been the case. You are never too young, or too old for that matter, to defend yourself. Historically, in the United States, the term militia has an entirely different connotation. During much of the 19th century, militias were considered to be common institutions central to civic and community life. They were a common fixture at festivals and celebrations. They functioned in some ways as fraternal orders function today. Although some critics of the militia idea have attempted to claim militias existed primarily to suppress slave rebellions, the fact is that militias were common and they were widespread in northern states where they didn't have any role in maintaining in the institution of slavery. In fact, militias often served an important role in providing opportunities and community cohesion for new immigrants. The local militias of the 19th century consisted of independent, centralized state militia systems, and they functioned largely as private entities. They elected their own officers. They were self-funded. They trained on their own schedules. Although they were ostensibly commanded by the state governors, this system of functionally private militias became an established part of daily life for most Americans. Most, not a small number. These were local volunteer militias with names like the Richardson's Light Guard, the Detroit Light Guard, the Asmonean Guard, the Mormon Militia. They were essentially private clubs. They were composed of gun owners who were expected to assist in keeping law and order within the cities and towns of the United States. They were separate from the so-called common militias, which developed in the 18th and early 19th centuries and were commanded by an established state bureaucracy. But by the Jacksonian period, new volunteer militias began to arise, as noted by Jeffrey Rogers Hummel. The United States by the 1830s had seen a remarkable growth in privately organized volunteer militia. Mostly it was, in those days, a way of surviving the lawlessness of the West. For instance, the Mormon militia in 1846 had 15,000 armed and trained men, and they all sported repeating rifles. They were designed and built by Browning himself. It can be said that they could have taken on the Union Army at that point in time and beat it. Yeah, and beat it. But they didn't. They left to Salt Lake City instead. By the way, the Union Army followed them to Salt Lake City. Mormon scouts saw them coming, and rather than fight them or let them burn the city to the ground, which was their intent, the Mormons buried Salt Lake City. I mean, buried it in dirt and planted corn on top of it. And by the time the Union troops got there, there was nothing there but farmland, nothing to burn down. Militia hid their guns and didn't fight. These groups, in the words of historian Marcus Cunliffe, volunteer companies existed independently of the statewide system of militia, and they held themselves aloof from the common mass. They provided their own uniforms. They also elected their own officer, did their own fundraising. As a member of the Detroit Light Guard remembered, at that time the company got nothing from the state but had to pay for all they got, uniforms and everything. By the 1850s, this is before the Civil War, firearms and uniforms were becoming more affordable to the middle and working classes. This brought in many new members from outside the local elite circles of established families. The members of these guards came up with a plan to offer honorary memberships to wealthy members of the community. The largest donor in this scheme was a man named Richardson, after whom the militia was soon named. Funding from prominent community members also added legitimacy to the group. They looked better, they sounded better, they acted better. And Massachusetts wasn't the only place where militias were privately funded and privately controlled. When Iowa became a U.S. territory in 1838, for example, an official territorial militia was formed. They had a lot of threats out there in the wild, wild West. The formation of local militia groups was more relaxed in comparison to the state militia service. To form a local militia group, one would simply ask for local men to sign up. That was about it. Indeed, this sort of local and even private ownership was an increasingly common method of organizing militias by mid-century. Hummel concludes that because many volunteer units were privately organized, privately recruited, privately equipped, the militia became a partially privatized system as well. They were incorruptible. And because of their local nature, many militias reflected local character, and they accessed to it was limited to national ethnic minorities or majorities. By the 1850s, immigrants had come to dominate many of the volunteer militias. Irish, Scottish, German militias, even Italian militias, the Guardia Nazionale Italiana. Robert Ernst notes that the significance of the immigrant military companies is evident in the fact that in 1853, more than 4,000 of the 6,000 uniformed militia in New York City, they were of foreign birth. Yeah. And the militia groups were limited to Christians. They were not limited to Christians. Jack D. Foner recounts in the American Jewish Archives Journal, and I quote, Jews in New York City formed military companies of their own. Troop K, the Empire Hussars, was composed entirely of Jews. was the Young Men's Lafayette Association, a third unit. The Asmonean Guard consisted of both Jewish and Christian employees of the Asmonean, one of the earliest Anglo-Jewish weekly newspapers. Our employees, commented the newspaper, have been seized with this military mania, and they have enrolled themselves into an independent corps. As militias became more middle class, their names changed as well. Militias began to refer to themselves with names that might be used for sports teams today. They were called the Invincibles. They were called the Avengers. They were called the Snake Hunters. Dress uniforms were often extravagant and modeled on Napoleon's troops earlier in the century. These groups were even known to impress foreigners. As one Englishman remarked, they marched in sections with a splendid band at their head, and it would be impossible to find a more military-looking, well-drilled body of men. These volunteer militias were attractive to potential members because these groups served many social functions as well, as noted by historian Britain Cooper Bush. In peacetime, all volunteer militias helped their communities celebrate festivals, holidays, funeral marches, balls, banquets. They helped out in emergencies and often build an esprit de corps, which established a basis for effective wartime service and even elite reputations. In many cases, membership in a local militia provided opportunities for social advancement, and it was not uncommon for individual families to have strong associations in these institutions. For newcomers to any community, whether or not of foreign origin, the militia company provided a means for newer residents to embed themselves into the fabric of the community, find a job, find a place to live, find social support, maybe even from their own hometown in Europe. The volunteer militias played a similar note to that of the volunteer fire brigades of this period, which in many communities came to be dominated by immigrant groups: Irish, Chinese, Germans, Russians. Militias over time have been replaced by police and centralized National Guard. Needless to say, the model of American militias is long gone from the imagination of nearly everybody in America now. Modern-day journalists and scholars have been hard at work attempting to connect militias, past and present, either to slavery or to fringe groups or to vigilantism. In the state of North Carolina, it is illegal to form a private militia. Against the law. Federal intelligence agencies have infiltrated all the militias, including BLM and Antifa. They collect files and records on all organizers and can use this evidence at any time to take legal action to arrest, to convict, and sentence militia members and organizers as enemy combatants if they harm officers of the law or guardsmen. As far as we can tell, not much legal action is taken against members who harm innocent people. As the size and scope of taxpayer-funded bureaucratic agencies grew throughout the 19th century and the 20th century, private volunteer militias were deemed increasingly unnecessary and undesirable. In fact, the armed American himself became undesirable, unpopular, shameful. To belong to the NRA is the same as belonging to a militia these days. When it comes to urban environments, these militia were in many respects replaced by today's state and local police forces. The old militia system was by no means flawless, but this switch to a more centralized, militaristic, bureaucratic system is not without costs of its own, both in terms of dollars, but more in terms of abuse and corruption. Of course, its biggest threat was never to the communities they served. It was always, and still is, the threat to the central government rule by law, that remains the top reason for banning their formation or membership. As I said, even membership in the NRA is viewed as joining a militia by the global syndicate. Membership dues that finance campaigns are just as much a political weapon as bullets. Moreover, as has become increasingly apparent in recent years, National Guard troops and local police forces are clearly inadequate to provide safety and security for private homes and businesses. The vast majority of the nation's violent crimes remain unsolved, as police focus on petty drug offenses rather than homicides. Meanwhile, as happened in both Ferguson and Kenosha, National Guard troops focus their protection on government buildings, while private businesses can burn to the ground. The truth was and is today that Americans are their first own line of defense. The police are not there to protect you. They're there to collect fines and fees for the state. The National Guard is there to rescue you, not prevent harm to you. The only person who can protect you from harm is you. The next best defense is your neighbor. And that, Earth Explorers, is the birth of militias. All right, let's talk a little bit about rogue waves. That's a good story. One crew member on the 2002 built livestock carrier Gulf Livestock 1 has been rescued by the Japan Coast Guard this last week. Sereno Edvardo, a 45-year-old chief officer from the Philippines, is the sole crew member to have been found alive following the Panamanian-flagged ship's sinking. A lot of ships are Panamanian flags, very few regulations. In the early hours, Wednesday of this week, off the southern Japanese coast, another 42 crew are missing, as are 5,867 cattle. Edvardo, plucked from the sea after many hours in the East China Sea, related that the ship had encountered bad weather caused by Typhoon Maisak. Its engine failed, and then a freak wave, a rogue wave out of nowhere, battered the converted former box ship, and it capsized. When the ship capsized, the crew were instructed to put on life jackets. Edvardo said he jumped into the water and did not see any other crew before he was rescued. The vessel, which was en route from New Zealand to China, is owned by the UAE shipowner, Gulf Navigation, and prior to conversion in 2012 to a 630-ton box ship. In May of 2019, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority identified stability and navigation issues in the Gulf Livestock 1, delaying its departure on a journey from Broome to Indonesia. New Zealand's Ministry for Primary Industries has temporarily suspended consideration of cattle livestock export applications in the wake of the accident. This is not the first cattle ship to capsize. Rogue waves are one of the most terrifying issues that are faced by ships since the start of shipping. Rogue waves, which are termed as killer waves, are dangerous. You remember the movie The Poseidon Adventure? Yeah. Ernest Borgnine, you remember that? Capsized ship, same thing. Rogue wave, out of nowhere. Smooth seas and then bam! Rogue waves usually occur in very deep water, and they have a focusing effect created as a result of a number of waves joining together. We call this constructive interference. Their height is often 10 times the height of even what would be called a significant sea. We're talking 20 stories. More than their height is the damage they create. Rogue waves are commonly known as freaky waves. Now, typically, they run parallel to shorelines. If they didn't, there'd be like a tidal wave every single day out of nowhere, just wiping shorelines out. But typically, they run parallel to shorelines or perpendicular to shorelines. They don't go into shore. The dangerous thing about these waves is that they appear without warning. They just suddenly swell. They don't show up on radar, and they move fast, hundreds of miles an hour. Though rescue methods can be tried during the occurrence of these waves, they usually fail because at times these waves are so fast, moving at sometimes 400 miles an hour, that precautionary measures fall short. You can't even turn the ship into it. It is to note that these waves are not the result of tsunami, earthquakes, or submarine, efforts underneath the water, like a table shifting or an explosion underwater. Experts identify rogue waves as the ones which exceed the height of 25 meters, but they can be way taller than that, a couple of 100 feet easy. These waves are able to capsize ships. That's why oil tankers and all that, when they go to sea with the hatches battened. That means that the boat could turn over, but it will right itself. It has ballast, and it will right itself, but it's still going to be devastating. Superimposition of small waves forms a big cluster, which is commonly known as these rogue waves. However, very few people are aware of the exact reason for generation of these waves. For any person, a rogue wave is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a ship. People who have witnessed these waves have only one word to explain, and that is absolutely devastating. Yeah, pretty crazy. Also, first story tonight, we talked about Kamala Harris being tied to a law firm that represents the Chinese Communist Party. Biden, that is to say Joe Biden with Obama influence, is actually married to the mob. Now, I don't mean the mob like Mario Puzo's mob. China Joe Biden said earlier this week, "Do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really? Come on, man." The former vice president also offered, "Does anybody believe there will be less violence in America if Donald Trump is reelected?" In other words, they're not turning down the screws at all after election. It could get worse. In blaming Trump for violence committed by the left, Biden has proven that he will blame anyone except for the rioters. Does anyone believe there will be less violence in America if Joe Biden is elected? I think his campaign finally figured out that the mob is not controllable. After all, the people who start revolutions are never the people who finish them. I think Biden's gang actually believed that the chant "Death to America" just meant orange mad bad. I really do. For the record, Biden declared, "I want to be very clear about all this. Rioting is not protesting." No shit. Still, in remarks that were supposed to show Biden has zero tolerance for mob violence, he stumbled. Just wasn't clear. He wasn't firm. Taking press questions, Biden brought up the murder of Portland resident Aaron J. Danielson, 39, apparently the handiwork of a Portland anarchist. Actually, he was part of a death squad. They targeted him, and they tracked him, and they killed him. They conspired, 6 or 7 of them together. Their conversations were all overheard. Biden didn't even refer to Danielson by his name. He did say, "I think what happened in Portland, where one of the Trump guys riding along in vans inciting response, shooting rubber bullets, I guess, or paintballs, apparently. There was someone shot by someone in the crowd with a bullet, killed. I think that person should meet the legal requirements of whatever that calls for. I think they should be investigated. They should follow through on what needs to be done. Let the judicial system work. That's what he said. That's the guy. That's the guy that they're running for president. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. Final segment coming up. And we'll try to end this on an up note if we can. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio right after this.
It's amazing how people have been raving about iAlife all over Facebook. They've been posting their testimonials just because they want to get the word out because it's worked so well for them. If you're not familiar with iAlife, it's a 99% pure CBD oil, but the secret is the synergy between the hemp and the ayahuasca vine, the non-psychoactive component of the ayahuasca tea. We recently received an email from a wife whose husband has Parkinson's. For the first time, he's been able to sleep through the entire night. Another customer reported that they're no longer using NSAIDs because their tennis elbow has been relieved with iAlife. The reports have been phenomenal and much more than we ever expected. Everyone should have access to this. That's why if you head on over to iAlife.com right now and use coupon code TFR, we'll give you $5 towards your order. And we'll even ship it worldwide. That's iAlife.com, AYALife.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products, available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Hey everyone, it's Mark Sargent from Strange World, broadcasting live every Tuesday evening, 10 to 12 Eastern, 7 to 9 Pacific, right here on True Frequency Radio. Strange World covers a wide range of topics, from enclosed world theory to lunar waves to the end of the world in film. It's basically doomsday with a silver lining. With the audience as my co-host, we take an optimistic approach to all things conspiracy and promote confidence, hope, and humor whenever possible. If there's a topic you want us to cover or a guest you would like to see interviewed, please email me at msargent23@comcast.net. So please join me and tell your friends about Truth Frequency Radio, the leader in real radio programming, bringing you quality, cutting-edge broadcasts from around the world.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back to X Squared Radio. We're live at the America Free Radio Studios. Final segment through the Truth Frequency Radio Network tonight. Phone lines are still open, 213-233-3998. Thanks for filling up the chat room. Thanks for the generous contributions. By the way, Bruce Kodish was generous in the top chat and says, with respect to Rogue Waves, see White Squall. I saw it. Really good movie. He says the movie is about my friend Chris Sheldon. So that's a storm, and then there was a rogue wave in there that just pounded the crap out of this small boat. But really something. And thanks, Moverling, for another donation there at the end on behalf of all of us. So generous. I appreciate it so much. And yes, please hit the share button. We're up to 62 shares, which is good. That's good. We're still hovering around 90 concurrent viewers. By the time we get through tonight, we'll be somewhere around 480, which is good. That's good. That's what we'd like to see. All right, let's get back to it. I know you all are interested in what my prediction is for the election. We're approximately 57 days, and it's time for my election prediction. I called the 2016 election within 4 electoral votes. I missed New Mexico. That was my miss. The first thing you have to ignore during this particular election season is the polls. Okay? That no longer represents the electorate. And the main reason is, as I said in 2016, is this right here. This is where people get their news now. They're not getting it from cable. They're not getting it from satellite TV. They're not listening to the news actors anymore. They're getting their news right here at America Free Radio. They're getting it through independent news. And that is producing an electorate that the pollsters cannot monitor. Okay? Mainstream news is no longer controlled by the fake stream news, even though the media giants have now consolidated down to, I think, 4 people, and you have 4 tech giants. They don't control us. They only give us a platform. Most people get their news from their phones, okay? And you have to look at early primary results. This is a very big deal. And the special elections, like when officials die or they go to jail or they're called to serve in the cabinet or they resign, okay? You look at those special elections. 100% of those elections have been won by candidates that Trump has endorsed. The Democrat majority in Congress has continued to shrink, and it's now down to only 14 seats. That's it. And I think as many as 70 Democrats could lose their elections in November, including Adam Schiff and Maxine Waters. It's quite possible. It is also about primary elections, which are real electoral contests, and the votes are counted and they tabulate. Now, we know that 63 million Americans voted for Trump in 2016, and that number may be as high as 100 million now. And those people are passionate about America. This is something that also relies on this real election passion and not any kind of opinion poll. Trump may win more than 85% of the vote in New Hampshire. And that, Earth Explorers, is stunning. Unlike election analysts such as 538's Nate Silver, whose complex models include national polls, state polls, economic data, some historical information, blah, blah, blah. These models are simple. In fact, they're simplicity itself. And it thus far is less prone to error. Okay, it relies on nothing more than nothing more complicated than a century of history during which the candidate with the best showing in his party early primaries nearly always wins the general election. And Trump has shown very, very well. This pattern revealed itself in the year 1912. In the first year primaries, played a major role in the nominating process. We frequently use that election as an example of how predictive the primaries are for the outcome of the general election and the fate of the candidates. Republican William Howard Taft, do you remember him? Well, maybe not. But he had been president for one term, but he was challenged for the party's 1912 nomination by his predecessor and fellow Republican, Theodore Roosevelt. The latter handily won. He won the GOP primaries. But because Taft was the incumbent president, he was still able to garner the party nomination at the Republican convention. So guess what happened? Democrat Woodrow Wilson won his party's primary contest as well and the Democrat presidential nomination. Avro Lancaster has generously contributed. Thank you for the Shasta interviews. We'll have to try that out next year. Very cool. Good job, Brooks. Good job, Rob Potter. Brooks was there. Yes, I was there. And I gave my Remembering the Future, the Physics of the Soul and Time Travel lecture. But the credit goes to Rob Potter. Against all odds, okay? He fought the city. He fought the law. He made us all park in another location and walk up, very clandestine. We packed 150 people and vendors inside this location and had a 5-day-long conference without getting caught by the law. Very good job, Rob. He deserves the credit. Thank you so much, and I'll pass your appreciation on to him. In November of 1912, Wilson defeated Taft, and he became president. In other words, the candidate who won his party's primary contest defeated an incumbent president who had been unable to fend off his rival in the GOP primaries. He lost the primaries, but his party still gave him the nomination, and that's why he lost the election. Now, how does all this relate to the 2020 election? Well, inevitably, conventional election analysts will insist that this model doesn't apply this year due to the unique circumstances such as, COVID, Operation Corona Scare, and all this crazy rioting, and 48 out of 50 of the largest cities are being burnt and attacked, and Democrat governors and Democrat mayors have squared off against the president, holding their own people hostage to get the orange man out of the White House. But we've endured pandemics before. I mean, real ones. We have had riots before, much worse than this, much worse. We've had controversial presidents before, absolutely. They really have not had much influence in the past, but then no president has been as successful as Trump has been at sweeping all the broken glass, all the charred furniture, and the dead bodies into the Biden campaign office. My prediction is what I call unconditional final. It does not change. It is a mathematical model based on things that have happened. The presidential election of 2016 has happened. The primary results are in. Everybody thinks Trump is going to go down in flames. But here I am, predicting with almost total certainty that he is going to win. It seems crazy, but it isn't. President Trump will defeat Joe Biden. And I'm going to say at least 360 electoral votes to 170 in the Electoral College. and he will probably win the popular vote as well. If you were masochistic enough to actually watch the DNC, the Democrat National Convention, you don't need me to tell you how this is going to end. You already know. The oldest political party in the world has chosen the oldest presidential candidate in U.S. history to peddle old ideas. Mark it down, Earth Explorers. Put this on your refrigerator door. Of course, two things could happen to change it. The first is a massive terrorist attack like an EMP weapon or a rash of car bombs. It would not go well for anybody. If you get the vote-in-person vote suppressed, there's a possibility Joe Biden could win with strictly mail-in ballots. The second, of course, we don't even like to speak about. It's an assassination attempt that leaves Trump or a member of his family injured. Believe me when I tell you that the syndicate has the money, they have the weapons, and they have the resolve to kill millions, if that's what it takes, in order to defeat Trump. We have to find that bomb, and justice must be served. No more delays on the arrests. I've been saying this for months now, but now I really mean it. Okay? President Trump, your staff, you're listening tonight. I really mean this. War is justice denied. You must send the marshals to begin the raids. You have to. It's going to be seen as weakness, and it is weakness, if you don't follow through. Because the global syndicate strategy has not changed. It hasn't changed in thousands of years. Maybe it can't change. Maybe there's some kind of rule, some kind of cosmic rule. Maybe it has been done this way on many worlds for billions of years. In order to effectively, and with as much certainty as possible, decimate and destroy a country, its middle class must be thoroughly eradicated. That's what they did in 1929. They evaporated the middle class, stretched us out in the stock market. We thought we were indestructible. The Roaring '20s were roaring like a lion, and they pulled the plug. They crashed the money supply. They smashed the middle class into non-existence. It didn't come back. It didn't come back for over 30 years. It was done. They tried to do the same thing with Operation Corona Scare, but there was too much value in the system. People were making money. They weren't leveraged in the stock market. Big corporations are. That's how they're funded. But the middle class, not so much. Their 401ks, yes, but as a direct effect on their existing financial strength, hardly any effect. They were able to rebound almost immediately. Now, a lot of small businesses ended forever. I just went to Planet Fitness yesterday again. Lights on, nobody home. I want to work out. They want me to work out. I need to work out. And I'm not alone. There's a whole city here that's members of that gym, but we can't go. And that gym is hurting. I don't want to see Planet Fitness go out of business. But a lot of businesses did go out of business because the state forced them out of existence. The infamous Soviet-style communist Saul Alinsky, mentor to Hillary Clinton, who wrote her senior thesis on him, There's Only the Fight, a Wellesley College, wrote extensively about it in his book, Rules for Radicals. Barack Hussein Obama is also an admirer of Saul Alinsky and his work, and actually taught the Alinsky method to students during his days as a radical community organizer. In Rules for Radicals, Alinsky wrote that it would be very difficult to destroy the middle class in the U.S. because it was too well educated. So the already largely leftist government school system set to the task of making the middle class stupid. They did a great job, to which Obama, his elections attest. You will recall Richard Cloward and Francis Piven. I've talked about them here on this program before. They developed a strategy of bringing down the USA via systematic overwhelming of virtually all of its systems, but specifically economics. They spoke of giving almost unlimited benefits to everyone in order to create a welfare state and collapse the system when it ran out of money, which it inevitably will, with more people on welfare than are working to support the system. And that's what we were experiencing during the Obama administration. Largely that's been corrected. And Common Core certainly made people stupid enough that they couldn't figure out anything other than what the state was telling them. The younger generations are being trained to follow and obey, not to have independent thought. In Dr. Susan Berry's piece, Common Core Roots Lie in Ties Between Barack Obama, Bill Ayers, she writes, the standards were created by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers to improve academic achievement and increase accountability. President Barack Obama and his administration embraced them. Actually, Barack Obama did not simply embrace a concept that others developed. Instead, the very roots of Common Core are in the early ideas that were generated by him and his fellow radical community organizer, Bill Ayers. No society or country has ever withstood a total economic, political, and cultural upheaval. Most notably, the ancient Roman Empire experienced it, and this quickly led to its downfall. Also in ancient Rome, with society crumbling, private armies for the wealthy elite began to spring up, while other areas of the falling empire went quickly back to the practice of creating and then using slaves for agricultural purposes. In the U.S. today, our traditional, biblically based cultural norms are being thrown out by an increasingly suppressive federal government, despite the will of the people. Marriage is now open to virtually anything, any kind of coupling you want. Holy Bible is being banned, church is being banned, church is being burned, church meetings are being banned. The Bureau of Land Management, created to manage state-owned land, has now become the Gestapo arms of the current resident in what was once our White House. But President Trump is pulling a lot of that back, doing away with a lot of those regulations. The full economic collapse that happened during the Obama administration has been largely reversed. It's strong enough now that I think the middle class is going to survive. The truth is we have a challenge. At this juncture, the syndicate only has one enemy, and that's Donald Trump. We're standing with him, but one enemy. You want to see another brighter day? For heaven's sake, fight back and quit cowering in the corners. Because if you don't, very soon, this form of communication right here that we're doing, it's going to be cut off. I just got a notice today, YouTube live stream is going away. It's going away this month. Yeah, all these podcasters, it's going away. You might still be able to do it directly through YouTube, but we use a multi-platform streaming system so we can stream to Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube all at the same time. It's being ended this month. We're going to have to find another solution. They finally caught up with us. Your state governments hold all the keys. States are now the only hope we have to survive, which, by the way, is the reason the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution were written in the manner they were written. Under the U.S. Republic's Constitution, the states and the people, not the federal government, have the real and overriding powers. When you hear people talk about our democracy, you're talking about mob rule. You're not talking about a republic. There are 24 corrupt states, and there are 26 states who want to reopen. They want to get America back to work. We have 24 governors to replace. We have 200 city councils to replace. We have 70 congressional and 12 senatorial Democrats that need to be impeached on November 3rd. 87 years of deep state construction that has been done with blood and blackmail is not going to be easy to take apart. We have our work cut out for us. And that would be you. And that's why you listen to this program. Yeah, we talk about political science. We also talk about economic science and science, biological, electrical, chemical, space research. We talk about it all here. None of it would mean anything without you. You are the reason that I come here for 15 years and sit behind this microphone for 7 hours a week to talk to you, to share my ideas with you, to listen to your ideas, and to benefit from your gracious contribution of your ideas, your contributions and money to this program to make it better. And we're getting better. We're getting better. We're getting very close to 10,000 subscribers now, which is a threshold for a program like this. Only you can make this program popular. I can't do it. Podcasters don't do it. We have no control over that whatsoever. Nothing that we can do can make it happen. It's only you. You're the ones through clicking that notification bell, through clicking the like button, putting comments in, and I respond to you. I write everybody back. Sign up for my newsletter. It's free. It doesn't cost a thing. Go to americafreeradio.com, sign up for the newsletter. I will send you the notes from Wednesday and Sunday programs, some of them. I'll give you all the notes for Sunday nights and make it available through Truth Frequency Radio at the website tfrlive.com for free. All the research, sometimes 50, 60 pages of notes. Tonight we have almost 51 pages of notes that we didn't go through all of it. We went through most of it. I love the callers. And you have access to that, so you can do your own research. And I reach out to you the same as you reach out to me, maybe more. I have taught many times, as I learned for myself, that it does not matter how much you are loved. I see people suffering from that, concentrating on how much they're loved. They're not loved enough by their government. They're not loved enough by the banks or by white people or whatever. That doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how you love others. Just remember, even Jesus had enemies, lots of them, that killed him. Hopefully they don't kill you. You're not going to have those kinds of enemies like we have. But what matters is how much you love others. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, even at the end of a life, you should never have any regrets for the people that you loved. The world can't have enough of it. It's the only thing that will last forever. Yes, from darknesses, universes spring. But that's the void. That's the singularity. You know what brings the light? It's us. It's the consciousness. And when they talk about unity, pay no attention. Because when we establish the light and then we turn it up, it only makes the shadows darker. It never means that you're going to be one with the shadows. You will never be one with the darkness. Be happy that you're the light. Because the light will shine, and the darkness shall comprehendeth it not. We're nearing the end of the Grand Division. And very soon, the gathering will begin. In the next few weeks, you'll feel it. Stay informed. Stay tuned. And remember this. Where we go one, we go all. My name is Brooks Agnew. This is X Squared Radio, saying peace with Explorer.